Hey there YouTube, Alex here, back for video number 2 of today. So on a bit of a roll here, I just wanted to rattle off another thread response. And I saw this was put up quite a while ago now, probably 4 weeks ago. And I've been wanting to get a response up for a long time now and haven't had the chance. So I thought I'd do it today because I did kind of promise to respond to it. And this is another album discussion thread put up again by Led1995Zeppelin. He did a Revolver thread a while ago which I responded to, and now he's put one up on another equally as legendary album, Highway 61 Revisited, an album I absolutely adore. And yeah, just wanted to respond to it. He had some really interesting questions, 12 of them, so yeah, I won't waffle on. I'll get on with answering them. Right then guys, so yeah, I'll start off by showing you my copies of Highway 61 Revisited. I don't actually have the album on vinyl. It is very near the top of my list of albums to buy on vinyl, but just seriously, I haven't come across one copy in the shops. Been to various record stores over the last few months and haven't seen one copy, which is really strange actually, because obviously it's a hugely it's a legendary album, and you expect to see at least one copy, but the only copies I've seen have been on Discogs, sorry, and if you want, an early pressing, you're going to be paying 30, 40, maybe even £50, and to be honest, I'd rather wait until I have the money to buy a really nice copy, or get lucky and find one for a cheap price, than get a really crackly old one for a really cheap price. I'd rather just listen to it on CD. But I do have two copies, two CD copies. The first one is the stereo version, and I believe this was the first Dylan album I ever bought. Best part of 2 years ago now, and what a great place to start. I mean, Highway 61 Revisited, kind of whet my appetite, and ever since then I've been buying every Dylan album I can get my hands on. So yeah, just really stemmed from this album for me, and once I bought this and listened to it a few times, I was just hooked to Dylan's music, and just haven't looked back since. So yeah, this was the first Dylan album I bought, and I have to say the stereo version is very good. It's very clear and very enjoyable to listen to. I believe that's it is what's playing in the background. And then the other copy I have is the mono copy, and of course this is the one that came with my mono box set. And it's amazing actually to compare the two, the mono and the stereo versions, and it's incredible just how different they are. That's kind of, you can say the same for the mono box set in general. Once you get bring it all back home onwards, the albums you start to pick up differences between the mono and the stereo, more so than you do with the earlier albums. Obviously that's because there's more musical elements coming together and working together, and it's fascinating to compare them side by side and yeah, listen to the differences. So it's great to have both of those copies. I'll get on with these questions. Where would you rate this among Dylan's albums? And I think I actually did a top 5 Dylan albums, my top 5 Dylan albums in a video, I think probably 5 months ago now. In fact, I'll put a link up here so you can go and check those out, because not much has changed since I did that list. I mean, I still consider those albums to be his best ones, and I think I ranked it 3rd in that list, so obviously very high up, and I regard it as one of his best albums, edged out slightly by Blonde on Blonde and Blood on the Tracks, which I consider those two albums to be just slightly better as a collectively as a group of songs than Highway 61 Revisited is. But that being said, this is still an essential album for anyone. It really, really is. And I think even for the people, when this album came out, a lot of people just really hated it. They couldn't stand the fact that Dylan was going electric, straying away from his topical songwriting, his protest songs. But I think even those people will look back and consider this album as being genius. And the reason for that is because I don't think these songs require a message behind, you know, all of them. I don't think they require the kind of, you know, kind of a topical slant that so much of Dylan's early work had, because you can just admire these songs for their lyrical brilliance. You don't have to look really deep into them. Of course you can do, and a lot of people do look very deep into these songs, and, you know, myself included, but these songs just stand by themselves, and that's what I love about this album. So yeah, that's kind of the same as the second question. Kind of answered two questions in one there. Is it one of your favourite albums? Yeah, I mean, yeah, it came third in my list of Dylan albums. To be honest, I'm that much of a Dylan fan that it would probably come third if I did a list of favourite albums by any artist. I mean, I can't see any other albums that beat those top three: Blonde on Blonde, Blood on the Tracks, and Highway 61 Revisited. For me, well, in my opinion, they're the best three albums by anyone. I mean, yeah, rivaled by the Beatles, of course, and Rolling Stones. But I'm just such a huge Dylan fan that, you know, those would probably be my top three albums. Okay, question 3. What do you think of the lyrics? To be honest, I think either this album or Blonde on Blonde is an example of Dylan's peak in terms of his writing and his songwriting. Sorry, I mean, it just really doesn't get much better than on this album. You know, you have to focus so intensely on the words on this album, I find, because he speaks so fast and he says so much that you just have to listen intently to every single word, and it's just mesmerizing and moving a lot of the time. So the lyrics are, you know, top notch. Really, I don't see, you know, there can't be many albums that are better lyrically than Highway 61 Revisited. And of course, this album inspired so many people. You know, the Beatles were inspired by this album, the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys. I think, you know, this has to go down as one of the most inspirational and influential albums ever recorded. So I'm a huge fan of the lyrics on this album, and they're very surreal, of course, the lyrics on this album. A lot more surreal than his earlier work, and a lot of his later work, actually. This is probably one of his most surreal albums. I think even more surreal than Blonde on Blonde, or maybe equally as surreal as that album. So, huge fan of the lyrics. Fourth question is, what do you think of Dylan's vocal and musical performance? And, you know, as I kind of mentioned there, there's so much to take in on this album lyrically. You have to, as I said, you have to listen so intensely to it, to the words, to every word, that you can kind of get lost in it, and you kind of forget that the music is behind it in a way. Like, you listen more to, well, personally I listen more to the words on this album than I do to the music. But then once you start to listen to the music as well, and listen to the song more as a whole, you start to recognise how good the musicianship is on this album. I think Bruce Springsteen once described the snare drum on Like a Rolling Stone as being someone kicking open the door to your mind, and I absolutely love that description, because it is just like that. I mean, the music on this album almost tells a story, and obviously works very well with the words. So, huge fan of the music, and yeah, in terms of vocal performance, I think I slightly prefer Dylan's voice on Blonde. But the thing I do admire heavily is how Dylan managed to change his voice so much between June of 1965 and when he recorded Blonde on Blonde in February of 66. I mean, that's 6 months, and he managed to completely overhaul his voice. But, you know, as much as I love the voice he has on Blonde, I think this is a very good voice. He bellows out a lot of the songs. You know, for instance, when he says, "How does it feel?" on Like a Rolling Stone, I mean, that just sends chills down my spine. The way he just bellows that out is very moving. So, yeah, very good vocal performance as well. Okay, so the next question was, do you like Dylan electric or acoustic? I think that was the question anyway. And I have to say that I much prefer his electric albums to his acoustic albums. I mean, you know, if the electric albums weren't released, I mean the Bring It All Back Home, Highway 61 and the Blonde on Blonde, if those, what they were called was the Holy Trinity of Dylan albums back in the 60s, if he hadn't have released those and it was just his first 4 acoustic albums, I would still consider those to be masterpieces. But for me, the real genius came out of Dylan when he released those electric albums in the mid-60s. I think, you know, Bring It All Back Home was when Dylan really became a lyrical genius. And his best songs, I think, came out of that period. So I do prefer him as an electric, those electric albums to the acoustic albums. But I'm a huge fan of the acoustic songs he did as well. So, you know, in terms of performances, I mean, do I prefer his electric performances, for instance, on his world tour of '66? I think I do. I mean, that world tour was just legendary for the electric performances. And just the rebelliousness of it. I mean, just the fact that everyone hated it, but he just stared all that adversity in the face and just did what the hell he wanted to anyway. It's just so admirable, and I think that just adds to the brilliance of the songs as well. And you can really feel that when he's singing them. So I do prefer him as an electric performer, but his acoustic performances in the early '60s were also incredible. If you listen to those performances, he improvises on a lot of the songs, and yeah, those performances are incredible as well. So, but I think in general I would say I prefer him electric, but it's just an opinion thing. I mean, a lot of people prefer him the acoustic albums, but I think it was an amazing moment for rock and roll when he went electric in Newport, and I think it kind of it's a big milestone in his career.